Hi, welcome to Vanished Voices. We're your hosts. I'm Jenna.
And I'm Shannon. So before we dive in, a quick ask. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Audible, please take a moment to rate and review Vanished Voices. It helps push these stories further. And if you're on YouTube, hit subscribe and turn on the bell so you never miss an episode. Thank you for helping us amplify these voices.
It's just after 4 a.m. on a freezing February morning in 2022. Commuters on Interstate 580, south of Reno, spot flames licking the sky from the shoulder of the road. A car fully engulfed, abandoned on the overpass near Galena Creek Bridge. At first, there was nothing to suggest this was anything more than a car engulfed in flames on a stretch of highway. Firefighters rush in, get the blaze under control, and that's when the real horror reveals itself. In the trunk, curled amid the charred wreckage, is the body of a young woman, shot to death, then stuffed inside, and the car set on fire, like someone wanted every trace of her erased. Her name was Anna Marie Scott. She was 23 years old, a proud member of the Pyramid Lake Paiute Tribe, a devoted mother to 2 little kids. She was full of love, laughter, and dreams in a place where Indigenous women too often vanish without a trace. Almost 4 years later, her killer is still out there. No arrests, barely any public updates from investigators, and a community left asking, why does justice feel so out of reach for so many missing and murdered Indigenous women like Anna? Today, we dive into the unsolved murder of Anna Marie Scott, a story of loss, silence, and a fight that refuses to fade. Now, behind that horrific discovery was a young woman whose life was full of light, love, and everyday joys that make someone irreplaceable. Anna Marie Scott was just 23 years old when her life was stolen. So young.
Yeah, and already a mom to 2.
Mm-hmm.
So they were little.
They were. Born and raised in Reno, Nevada, she was a proud enrolled member of the Pyramid Lake Paiute Tribe, a community that stretches across the starkly beautiful high desert north of the city, centered around the ancient, sacred Pyramid Lake itself. To her family and friends, Anna wasn't defined by tragedy. Like I said, she was a devoted mother to 2 small children. She had a little boy and a girl who were the absolute center of her world. Anna's stepmother, a woman named Victoria, once said Anna had one goal in life: to be the best mother she could possibly be. And she poured everything into that while working to provide for her kids, too. Anna relied on her close-knit family for support. Her grandmother, Diane Scott, who raised her more like a daughter, often cared for the children, always there to help Anna out, and happy to weave in the traditions and the strength of their Paiute heritage. Anna was described over and over by those who loved her as full of love and laughter. A big heart, one of a kind. She was the kind of person who loved and cared for everyone who did the same for her. She was a daughter, a sister, a cousin, a friend, and yes, a die-hard Las Vegas Raiders fan, the type who'd light up talking about game day. The Pyramid Lake Paiute Tribe itself honored her in a heartbreaking Facebook post shortly after her death. It said, quote, Anna Scott was a mother, a daughter, a cousin, a friend, a member of the Pyramid Lake tribal community. She was full of love and laughter. We'll link to that so you can read the full post that they put out. She was deeply connected to her tribal roots, part of a community that gathers for prayer circles, memorials, and celebrations of life, even in grief. Family events at the Nixon Cemetery, balloon releases, solidarity walks. These weren't just rituals, they were Anna's world, a world built on resilience, culture, and unbreakable family ties. But on February 3rd, 2022, that world shattered. Anna's bright spirit, her laughter, her dreams for her kids, her place in her community was violently taken away. What we know about Anna's final days is frustratingly limited. Investigators have repeatedly appealed to the public for any details about her movements, her contacts, anyone she spoke to or saw in those hours, and especially the days leading up to that early morning discovery. Here's the timeline that we pieced together from official statements and reports. Late January, early February, Anna is living her everyday life in Reno, caring for her 2 young children, leaning on family like her grandmother, Diane, staying connected to her roots. No public reports of her being reported missing before this happened. On February 3rd, around 4 a.m., Nevada Highway Patrol and firefighters responded to a fully engulfed vehicle on fire on the southbound shoulder of Interstate 580 near the Galena Creek Bridge, which, like we mentioned, is south of Reno. It's this remote, elevated stretch of highway that cuts through the high desert.
So that was going to be my first question. Is this a heavily traveled highway?
It's the opposite.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then where do we know where her kids were at 4 a.m. on a February 3rd morning?
So I believe that they were with her grandmother. It hasn't been publicly confirmed. And I'm not sure if she was working the day before.
Right.
And
on her way
didn't
home.
come home
Yeah.
or was on her way home, or if it was a day and they were trying to track her down,
Yeah.
but hadn't officially reported her missing yet.
Okay.
I'm not, well, the reporting is so limited, which is, I always want all of those details.
Right. Yeah, that's helpful.
Mm-hmm. Once the flames are out, they did discover Anna's body in the trunk. And like we mentioned, she had been shot, which has been ruled a homicide. And the fire clearly set to destroy evidence.
So I'm guessing she was not completely destroyed in the trunk?
She wasn't completely destroyed. It did take them a few days to identify her, though.
She was that badly burned.
Mm-hmm.
But they could immediately tell that there had been
a gunshot.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure if that's because bones, in the fire, they wouldn't be destroyed that quickly.
Yeah.
So maybe that was
well, that's why. Was it after the autopsy and they discovered the shooting or that she'd been shot, or did they know immediately that not only has this person been burned, but they've been shot?
It sounds like they knew immediately.
Okay.
It took until February 7th, so that was on the 3rd pretty early, that they found her.
Oh, do they know? Because I'm just thinking, okay, you shoot somebody, then put them in the trunk. I guess you could have put her in the trunk and then shot her and then set it on fire. But do they know, or have they publicly said, do they believe she was shot in the trunk of the car? Like she'd been kidnapped and then put in there?
I'm not.
Or we don't know?
We don't know.
Okay.
I feel like they know, but they haven't released that. On the 7th, the Washoe County Sheriff's Office publicly identified Anna and confirmed the case as a homicide. Pretty quick after, mid-February 2022, detectives named 23-year-old Jakari Shaw, who was a Reno man with ties to the tribal community, and we'll talk more in depth about him in a minute. They identified him as a person of interest that they wanted to question. Not a suspect, they stressed, but someone who might have key information to helping them solve this.
So he is not a tribal member?
It just says ties to the tribal community, so I don't believe that he's a tribal member. On February 23rd, almost 3 weeks after Anna's body was found, Jakari was fatally shot by police during an unrelated arrest attempt in South Reno involving weapons charges, which means that whatever he might have known goes with him.
Yeah, so
we'll get into that full thing.
Okay, because I'm like, hold on a minute.
Yeah.
How is it unrelated? But sounds like they were using outstanding charges to get him in to talk to him, and then he resisted.
Exactly. Yep. And had weapons on him.
Right.
Yeah. And then her timeline kind of stops. There's not a ton of information that comes out since then. For the rest of 2022 up until now, We have annual memorials at the Nixon Cemetery. They did balloon releases, prayer circles, and celebrations of life for Anna. The Pyramid Lake Paiute Tribe pushed hard in July 2024 for new tips, stating that the burned car belonged to Anna, which is something law enforcement had never officially confirmed before then. They increased the reward for information to $5,000. Senator Catherine Cortez Masto highlights her case on the Senate floor for Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women Awareness. And today, as of the very beginning of 2026, the case remains unsolved.
Well, and I'm thinking, so there had to be more than one person involved because you can't set a car on fire in a remote area and then escape. If the police showed up fairly quickly to the reporting of a burned vehicle.
I want to say that they could have because it's remote. It's the middle of the night. People aren't passing. If you set that on fire and it took a while for it to get somebody else's attention, they would have had time, I think, to get away.
To walk. That's where I'm like, if you're in a remote area, are you really walking away?
No, you're right. I was thinking just about Anna Marie.
I'm thinking about the person.
Yes.
Like, that's what I'm thinking. There had to have been more than one person involved because that's the getaway car for all intents and purposes. You're lighting up her. So now we know it's her vehicle. So you're lighting up her vehicle, but then how are you getting away?
Unless somebody had her come meet them there for some sort of.
Okay. Yeah.
Which again, I don't have any actual information on that. But that's the only thing I can come up with, right? If they were, maybe they owed her money or she owed them money or something. And it was like, let's meet here. The area, as far as I can find, doesn't have any connection. Like I'm not seeing that it was, like we talked about.
Like there's a stop to shop on the corner and like you would think, okay, if you owe me money, let's meet at a gas station, not the side of a road.
Here's a picture of pretty remote.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I
mean, the only thing I could say about that is if it's just a place you gather to like hang out.
Mm-hmm. But you think someone who's familiar with the area.
But they're not. I mean, to me, that's more of a teenager hangout when you're not legal to like drink or something, but they're all clearly over 21. So you don't hang out in the rocks when you can legally enter a bar.
Right. But if you know this area exists, you know it's not well traveled, and maybe it is somewhere that was on her way to or from work, or I don't know, maybe somewhere she liked to have some peace and quiet for a second. And you said, okay, I'll meet you there. And then did that. Stranger. Or there's 5 people involved.
Right. Or it's a stranger. She pulled over. Maybe her car broke down.
Mm-hmm.
And then the person that stopped to help was not really the one you want.
Right.
To help you.
Could have had robbery in mind.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see information on
it. Oh, yeah. Well, of course, they probably could. Yeah. Could they have even been able to tell? I would be more curious. Was she at work, leaving work, had worked that day?
Same.
When were they expecting her? Did she often hang out later at night and then come back for her kids since the grandma helped out so often?
Mm-hmm. Maybe they were having a sleepover that night and she wasn't expected until later the next day. When we talk about the timeline, we're not just looking at the dates. We're talking about accountability. When key details are withheld, it's tough because the public doesn't know what to look for. Witnesses don't know what might be relevant. Communities are left guessing instead of possibly helping. And for families, that silence compounds grief. Anna's case exists in the space where the most violent facts are known, but the connective tissue, so to speak, the story of how and why remains locked away, which we understand. We understand the integrity and not tipping off suspects or letting people know what you know. It is really tough, though, I think, especially for the families. Years later, our timeline still hasn't moved. The silence, the lack of answers, I think it fuels so much of the pain in these MMIW cases.
Oh, yeah.
Now, we mentioned Jakari Shaw. His name surfaced really early in the investigation. I mean, less than 2 weeks. And really, it raises more questions than answers.
So they publicly
Mm-hmm.
said his name
Yep.
to draw him out.
Yep.
Okay.
Or get others to let
Say where
them
he
know.
is. Yeah.
Exactly. They did, like we said, publicly announced him as a person of interest and stressed repeatedly that he is not being called a suspect. Detectives said over and over that they simply wanted to speak with him.
So potentially a boyfriend? I mean, they are close in age.
Potentially, yeah, same age. Maybe had been longtime friends,
Right.
or mutual friends.
Somebody she worked with that day.
Totally. They described wanting to speak with him because of a possible connection to Anna's case, something that might help explain her final movements or the events. So, someone that worked with her or was close to her makes sense. I couldn't find the connection, though, anywhere publicly between the two.
Not even her family has indicated?
Not that I could find.
Okay.
The most frustrating part in having a person of interest is that they never got to speak with him or find out what they needed to ask of him. No public details about the relationship, the sighting, phone records, or anything else has been released, just the vague phrase, quote, possible connection. They put it out as an urgent appeal for Shaw to come forward. He was a Reno man, same age as Anna, like we mentioned. He had the ties to local communities, but they didn't say that he was a tribal member. And that's as specific as the information ever got. Then on February 23rd, 3 weeks after Anna's discovery, everything changed. During an attempt to arrest Shaw on an unrelated felony weapons charge, which came from an incident the previous December. So it wasn't brand new. That had been ongoing. A Sparks police detective shot and killed him during a fatal foot chase in South Reno. Whatever he might have known, whatever questions detectives had for him, died that day with him. There have been no charges filed in Anna's homicide connected to him. No other suspects or persons of interest have been named publicly since. And the case has remained painfully quiet ever since. It's so frustrating. I want to know what they wanted to talk to him about.
I know. I'm like, I wish they could release that.
And I tried even looking in the places that I don't look for information just to see if I could get a better understanding.
Yeah.
I couldn't find it. So when official updates slowed, Anna Marie Scott's story didn't disappear. It shifted out of press releases, even though there weren't very many to begin with, and into the hands of the people who loved her. For Anna's family and for the Pyramid Lake Paiute Tribe, silence from authorities did not mean acceptance. For them, it meant advocacy. In the months and years following Anna's murder, her name continues to surface, not through police briefings, but through community remembrance, through vigils, through social media posts shared again and again on anniversaries of her death, and through tribal voices asking a simple, persistent question: where is the justice for Anna? The tribe publicly acknowledged her loss and renewed calls for information, even as official details remain limited. Community members emphasized that Anna was not just a victim of violence. She was a young Indigenous woman whose life mattered, whose death demanded answers, and whose story deserved transparency. Advocacy groups and organizations amplified Anna's case, placing it within the larger crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. Her name has become part of a broader call, not just to solve one case, but to confront the patterns that allow cases like hers to stall. Her murder sits in a landscape because this isn't an isolated incident. We know that. We know that Indigenous women are disproportionately affected by violence. Her case, just like so many others, is marked by delayed information, limited or non-existent media coverage, and long stretches of investigative quiet. And yet, despite all of that, her community continues to speak, to say her name, They continue to mark time, not by how many years have passed without an arrest, but by how long they've been demanding accountability. They continue to show that even when institutions go quiet, memory does not. I wanted to remind you of some of the stats. Maybe you've not heard them before. Maybe you have, but maybe I've got some new ones for you. Going from the Urban Indian Health Institute, the CDC, the National Institute of Justice, and a few federal databases, more than 84% of American Indian and Alaska Native women have experienced violence in their lifetime. So 84 out of 100. That is too much.
Very high number.
That's, almost all of them.
Yeah.
This includes sexual violence, stalking, or physical assault. And that's specifically higher than for non-Hispanic white women. In some regions, particularly certain tribal lands and communities, Indigenous women are murdered at rates that are 10 times the national average. Homicide ranks in the top 10 leading causes of death for Indigenous women and girls aged 1 through 45. And for some of the age ranges, it's the number 2 or number 3 leading cause of death. A landmark study in 2018 by the Urban Indian Health Institute reviewed 71 urban cities and identified over 500 cases of missing or murdered Indigenous women and girls. Just a snapshot, since about 70% of Native people live in urban areas today. In 2016 alone, there were 5,712 reports of missing Indigenous women and girls entered into the National Crime Information Center, but the federal NamUs database logged only a fraction of them, which highlights that
We know
massive
why?
gap.
Resources or
Resources, laws. We talked about Arizona not having to enter them if they
don't want
choose
to.
not to. And I don't think Arizona is the only state without that requirement. That's what I can't understand, is why that disconnect is so striking. Many cases involve urban settings or highways near reservations where the jurisdictional confusion between tribal, state, federal authorities lets their leads go cold. And perhaps most heartbreaking, clearance rates for these homicides are abysmally low.
So urban settings, as in large cities like Phoenix or Las Vegas or Reno.
Or Seattle or, St. Louis.
Interesting.
Yeah. I think we've talked about some of the statistics for communities or reservations or states as a whole, but the urban aspect of it is interesting because you would think you have more resources.
Well, more resources. And so again, this makes me think you still have people purposely targeting Indigenous women because, again, they know they're the easiest target. And that now we're going beyond the BIA and the it's just because you have local PD that would be on a reservation. You can only have tribal police or BIA. So that's very striking to me and very telling that you still have people, I would almost say targeting, well, I won't say almost, I am saying they're targeting Native women specifically.
Yeah.
Even in urban areas. When the population is so much larger, and I would say, again, statistically, that's a smaller portion of the population.
Absolutely. And that makes the jump to racial bias.
Right.
Overloaded departments that still don't have the resources to get to everything, so they choose what they get to and what gets put at the bottom of the pile. It seems like with the resources comes a bigger caseload, and they still can't get to them.
That's awful.
It is awful. Families wait years, sometimes forever, for answers. These aren't just statistics. It's daughters, mothers, sisters, friends like Anna, whose lives are cut short, whose communities grieve without closure. Awareness is growing, but we're not there yet. or anywhere close, I would say, because this case is, not to say only 4 years ago, but it is in a more recent time
Right.
where
Where
awareness,
technology is better,
yeah, technology and
Reno is, granted it's outside of Reno, but Reno's not that small.
right.
So you would think, again, resources would be better.
I would like to think that, but I
We know how old her children are.
couldn't find it.
Okay. Because now let's go into her inner circle. Like, okay, her children's father, was he investigated?
Right. Never named a person of interest or never put out as someone they wanted to speak with. I wanted to dig into why there was so little information about who she was or the timeline or things like that. I found a couple interesting things. Adult missing persons aren't automatically profiled publicly. So, when an adult goes missing, unlike missing children, there's no legal requirement for police or media to release background details. There's no legal requirement to say anything about their life, their routine, their job, or their relationships. The interesting thing to me was that I wasn't aware that was a legal requirement for 18 and under, but that is why a lot of times we'll have less information on the adults that go missing. This is especially true if law enforcement does not believe that there was an immediate danger or that public details would clearly help locate the person. So they often only release the bare minimum, like the name, the age, the basics for the physical description, and the last known general location, which really is exactly what we see here. And families are often advised to stay quiet, which is something that's rarely talked about. Families are told sometimes explicitly or implicitly not to speculate, not to share anything publicly, and not to, quote, interfere with the investigation. And sometimes, especially in marginalized communities, families may already have a distrust of law enforcement or a fear of being mischaracterized or concern that sharing personal details could backfire. So they might not put out that information for a very specific purpose. Anna's mother, Peggy, spoke out in the early months after she was killed, saying, quote, "Our daughter's life was cut short on February 3rd, 2022. And I want the people who did this to her to come forward and to admit what they did because it was foul." End quote. The pain echoes through the entire family. Her father, Joseph, and her stepmother, Victoria, who helped organize marches and prayer circles, and also Anna's grandmother, Diane, who often has been as involved as her parents. They've all carried this weight. They've been the ones to organize the memorials and sometimes turning those into acts of resilience. Every February, they gather at the cemetery on the reservation, placing flowers and mementos on her grave. They release balloons into the vast Nevada sky, a symbol of letting her spirit soar, even as they're anchored by unanswered questions. Prayer circles have become a cornerstone organized by the American Indian movement of Northern Nevada and the tribe itself. Advocate Ray Valdez has led many, reminding everyone that there needs to be accountability. The Pyramid Lake Paiute Tribe has honored Anna repeatedly on their platform. And like we mentioned, in 2024, they have renewed their plea for tips, increasing the reward for information to $5,000, always refusing to let her story fade. As tribal activist Autumn Harry said after multiple violent losses in the community, our communities are still feeling a lot of pain from each of these losses. Anna's family and tribe keep fighting not just for her, but for all the stolen sisters. They're the voices saying, we're not giving up. When we reach the end of an episode like this, and this is an episode that I wasn't sure if we should cover or not, because it's so limited on information. We have limited information on who Anna was, on timeline, on forensics, on all the things that I try to dig into and research. But in the end, that's exactly why we needed to cover Anna's case, because I'd be willing to bet most listening haven't heard her story. And that's the goal of Vanished Voices, to cover the stories that you're not going to be able to hear, to listen to anywhere else. And I know this one is shorter. I know it's light on information, but I still feel like her story needed to be shared. She has 2 young kids who are growing up without their mother, her family that deserves justice. They deserve answers. And when we reach the end of an episode like this, we have this natural instinct to look for a resolution, an arrest, a suspect, that clear timeline, that clear, here's the evidence that we have, any kind of real answers. But in Anna Marie Scott's case, that resolution, those answers, they haven't come yet. What we're left with instead is a choice. We can accept the silence, accept that years have passed without answers, without transparency, without justice, or we can do the quieter, harder thing and refuse to let her story fade. Because Anna's life didn't end at the moment she was found. It continues in the questions that remain unanswered, in the family who still waits, in the community that continues to speak her name when institutions and the media at large do not. And this is the part where we turn the narrative into action. If you're listening to this and you have any information, no matter how small, about Anna Marie Scott's case, you can contact the Washoe County Sheriff's Office or Secret Witness. You don't have to be certain. You just have to speak up. To contact the Sheriff's Office, call 775-328-3320 or Secret Witness anonymously at 775-322-4900. And her case number is WC22-563. And we'll put that all in our show notes. Even if you don't have any information, there is a broader call to action. Share her name. Remember her story. Talk about why some cases stall while others don't. Pay attention to whose lives receive urgency and whose don't. Because awareness is not justice, but justice doesn't happen without it. Anna Marie Scott was 23 years old. She was loved, she was Indigenous, and she deserved to come home. Until there are answers, we will keep telling her story. Anna deserved better. Her children, her family, her community, they still do. Do you have anything else you want to add or talk about?
Keywords: Reno, burning car, female shot, 23 years old, February 2022.
Yes.
Somebody knows something.
Somebody has to know something. I mean, that's such a big thing to do, to set someone's car on fire.
I hear about car fires that are just car engine fire. Like, you still get an alert about that. So how is it a body is found in the back of a car in their own vehicle, shot, and nothing?
Is so aggravating. I don't understand why these don't hit the media.
I mean, heck, I've passed cars on fire on the side of the road because you're always like, how did that catch on fire?
We live in Arizona.
Yeah.
They just catch on fire.
Right.
Yeah. But Reno's, I mean, it's
Reno's,
not as
that's
still,
like our weather.
Yeah. But that was not the case here. We should have heard about it.
I agree.
Yeah. So if you have any information about her final days, movements, something she might have said to you that you don't even think is important, might be what they need.
So that wraps up this episode of Vanished Voices. Thank you for being part of this community and for listening with compassion. For more on today's story, including citations, resources, and visuals, visit our blog at vanishedvoicespodcast.com. You can also find us on Instagram TikTok, and YouTube at Vanished Voices Pod, and we'd love to connect with you there. If you valued today's episode, sharing and rating the podcast goes a long way in helping us reach more listeners and elevate these important voices. We're on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, and just about anywhere else you can listen. And as always, refuse to let these voices vanish.
Bye.
Bye.